Hey friends, Kim from Stamping Imperfection. I have 4 cards to share with you today, and I am using the Happy Autumn Season Hedgehog Hollow subscription box for August. And this is the card that comes with it. You could color that card, and it's meant to be displayed, and if you're going to color it, you should put a frame around it. So this came with 2 stamp sets. This is the Happy Fall 4x6 stamp set, and it's got a fabulous background stamp and a smaller stamp. Then this larger set is the Pumpkin Patch set, and that is just fantastic. You also get a package of fall ephemera pieces here, and I cannot wait to create a scrapbook layout and a traveler's notebook layout with that. Then this kit came with 2 stencil sets. These are layering sets, and you can see the 3 layers together there for the apple with the branch. And this also has 3 sets, and you can see it layered there, which will give beautiful backgrounds. That apple branch will actually be perfect for making the whole card. Like, that's going to be your card. Add a sentiment and you're done. So I'm really loving this. So today I'm going to play with these 2 stamp sets, and I'll use 1 piece of ephemera on one of the cards just because I couldn't resist. The colors were just too inviting. So I'm going to start with this 4x6 set. Again, this is the Happy Fall set. And I love that this had the large background stamp plus that smaller stamp. That smaller stamp is just fantastic. Oh, and by the way, if you are a regular subscriber to the Hedgehog Hollow kits, you also got a package of 8 envelopes in the kit. And you might have gotten a different color than I got, but you get that package of 8 envelopes. So I love that. To start out, I'm just going to cut down a bunch of card bases. My card bases are going to be 4 1/4 by 11, and I will score them at 5 1/2. I'm also going to cut down a bunch of card fronts, and they'll be 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I'll trim a couple of them down even more. I'll let you know when I get there. So for card 1, I'm going to do some very easy stamping, and I'm going to add a little bit of an extra touch with some paper scraps. So I'm pulling out my Catherine Pooler Mandarin Spice ink. Like, that is one of my very favorite colors to use in the fall. This particular orange, in my opinion, is a perfect fall color. So I'm just stamping this Welcome Fall stamp set, and I'm using my Maker Forte smusher, which I love. And I could leave the card just like that if you really like clean and simple. Like, imagine how many of these cards you could make in a half an hour if that's what you did, because I stamped right on the card base. But I want to add a little bit of detail to it, so I pulled out several different colors of cardstock from my scrap stash, and I didn't have any green left because I've been using a lot of my scrap stash lately. So I pulled the Catherine Pooler Eucalyptus green ink, also one of my favorite fall colors, across a piece of paper, and I'm going to let it dry a little bit, and I'm going to take these papers and trim them down. So I actually am just creating little strips. You might already have little strips in your stash. This is a perfect way to use those little strips up. So I didn't try to make them all the same size or anything, and I decided to use an orange, a brown, a yellow, and that green I made with the eucalyptus ink. And I like this like burnt orange color, which is what I would call it. The dark brown, the eucalyptus green, and this almost orange yellow color. I think they're just wonderful fall colors. So I've been playing with those colors of papers a lot lately. You can tell I'm ready for making fall paper crafts. And fall is one of my favorite times of year to make things other than cards, you know, some household decor and things like that, because the papers are just so pretty. And to finish this off, all I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out some of my Maker Forte Crown Jewel gems. And you can see I have quite a few different colors. Every time I place an order, I add one more of these to my stash. So I pulled out these lime green ones, and I forgot to look up what color they are, but you can see I have red ones. I have these almost grayish purple ones that are rhubarb, and I am just adding 3. And I always add 3 because I'm super stingy with them. I want to put them on all my cards, but I only put 3 because I want them to last. So that completes the first card. So simple. Now for the second card, I'm going to use that big background stamp, and I'm going to use some ephemera. This time I inked it up in the eucalyptus ink, and the background piece I'm using is actually, I trimmed down to 4 by 5 1/4, so that I'll have 1/4 of an inch, or actually technically it's going to be 1/8 of an inch all around, so I can add some colored cardstock behind it. So I decided to use some more of that orange because I love it so much. So I'm just going to basically, I'm scoring my card base, and I'm just going to fold that, give it a nice crease with my bone folder, and then I'm going to add this orange layer, and then I'll add the layer I just stamped on top of that. Now there are so many ways to use this background stamp, and I actually stamped an extra panel in just black because I like to cut these stamps apart and use them as sentiments on my cards, or as title strips on scrapbook or traveler's notebook layouts. So I decided I wanted to add a strip of paper across the bottom there, and I decided I would keep with the orange, so I just trimmed down. This I specifically trimmed to 3/4 of an inch, and I made it 4 inches, I believe. That top white panel is 4 by 5 1/4, so that needed to be 4 inches wide. So I'm just gluing that down, and then I'm going to pull out a piece of that ephemera, and I had a lot of fun looking through that ephemera because there's so many to choose from, and I decided to stick with the orange color here because some of them I already know I definitely want to use in a scrapbook layout. So I stuck with that orange heart. I really liked that, the little plaid pattern. And I'm going to put some foam tape. I'm going to cover the back of that with foam adhesive tape and put it on my card. And then I added, again, I took 3 of those green little gems, and you can see I'm using my on the hook tools here, and I will use my magic wand to glue them down with some art glitter glue. And that's going to complete this card. I love the way this looks. Like, it's so simple. Again, 1 stamp, a piece of ephemera, some paper scraps, and a few crown jewel gems. 3 if you're me, and that completes the card. And that's a lovely card. Someone is going to love getting that in the mail. 2 quick and simple cards. Now this one is an easy scene card. This one took me a little bit longer to make, but I just couldn't resist this truck. Now these stamps came from the larger stamp set, the pumpkin patch stamp set. I thought these stamp sets were beautiful, and I'm looking through my Maker Forte inks because I love the Maker Forte inks, but they really don't have fall colors yet. I'm sure they're coming, but the orange is a little bright for me for fall. So I pulled out my black ink from Maker Forte, the Color Hive Eclipse black ink. I love this black ink because I'm going to use my Copic markers. Now if you want to watercolor it, you can't use that ink, so you would need to use some ink that's appropriate for watercoloring. So I'm covering up the image I just stamped in black, and I'm stamping 1 leaf in the Mandarin Spice, and the outline of the other leaf was eucalyptus, and I took 3 of my Copic markers, YG67, YG63, and YG61, and I'm just coloring that green leaf in. And nothing fancy, no fancy coloring. And there isn't going to be any fancy coloring on the truck either. I have a pretty simple formula for how I color these things in and how I create my scenes. Reds and greens from my Copic collection, and I went back and got some yellows and oranges, and I'll go back again and get some grays and some blues, but I'm taking my darkest red marker, which is R59, and I'm just putting it where I think I want the dark spots. I don't really have a rhyme or reason. I'm going to try to leave it lighter in the center of the truck, like the light source is hitting it straight on, and a little bit on the parts of the fender that are really sticking out toward the back. So I pull in my second darkest color, which is R27, and then I'm using, actually it might be 37, and R35 is the third one, and I just always go over the one I just did and then make it a little wider with the next color. And I'll just keep doing this and just filling in, going from darkest to lightest, and then I'll get that bumper to a point where I'm ready to just fill it in with the lightest color, which is, I believe, R32. I think it's R59, R37, R35, and R32. And so now I'm just filling in my pumpkins, and I pulled out some of the YR colors. Like this one's YR07, and I believe it's YR04. I just pick them from the same like group of 10s. So this is YR02, so those are like good blending colors for me. And I'm just adding a little bit more dark in the places where I think it will be dark, like behind the pumpkins, around the edges of the tailgate and the bumper. And all I really try to aim for when I'm coloring is to have some variation in the color, so somebody can look at it and see that there are dark spots and light spots. And if I don't get them perfectly placed, it doesn't matter, because it is really the fact that there are darker and lighter colors in there that I think will catch someone's eye. Like, it will make it look better. So I'm pulling out some blues and some grays. So I used W5, W3, W0. I think I only used 3 of those colors there for the bumper, just to give it a little gray. I always pull out the warm grays. I really should be pulling out cool grays for the bumper because it's an inanimate object. I covered that window with some B00, and then I put a couple of streaks of BG11 through it just to give some variation. And I'm just using my E31 to create like a little road. And I'm sort of trying to make it a little narrower toward the front of the truck and a little wider toward the back. And then I'm using R34 and R35, and I'm just making dots. And then I'm using R39 here, and I'm going to go back over all of it with R31. And that's going to give me a little gravel below me. Now I'm using that YG67 and YG63, and I'm just flicking in all different directions to give myself some grass along the side. And I used YG61 at the end, and I decided I better give it a sky, but I didn't want to use my Copic up because my Copics are actually getting pretty old now. They're like 3 years old, so they all need to be refilled, or they're on the verge of being needing to be refilled. So I pulled out the acid wash ink from Maker Forte, the Color Hive ink, and I'm using a very light hand with this acid wash ink, and it's a little darker toward the ground, and I'm trying to keep it lighter as I go up, and I'm trying not to go over the truck or the leaves there. So I've got a light blue sky behind there. I actually really like that color for sky, and if you just have just a touch of ink on your blender, it works out beautifully. So I trimmed that panel down that I just colored to 4 by 5 1/4, and I'm just going to put this directly onto my card base, which is still 4 1/4 by 11. I scored it and folded it at 5 1/2. I did use foam tape. I like the dimension. And these crown jewel gems are rhubarb, and they're sort of a gray lavender color, like purpley gray. They're very moody. I really like them, and it's a very pretty color for fall. So I love the crown jewel gems. Like, I cannot get enough of them. And you can see I'm using my magic wand and my on the hook tweezers for that. Like, that's my favorite thing. So here are the 3 cards, and I decided I'm not done. I have one more card I really want to make. So this panel I'm going to use a large sentiment and a small image from that larger stamp set, the Pumpkin Patch stamp set. They have like 4 fabulous sentiments, and I had to use at least one. So this Leaves Are Falling, Autumn is Calling one is beautiful. It's got its own little image there, but I also really loved that branch with the apple on it. So I stamped that toward the top, and I have this cut down to 3 1/4 by 5. I'm using the same reds I used on the truck, R59, R37, R35, and R22. I'm going to leave that big spot where they intend it to be bright as white. So I'm using the same greens to fill in a couple of the leaves. I'm going to add some variety to the leaves here. And I always start with the darkest toward the stem and work my way out to the lightest color. Now I'm using YR27, YR24, YR23, and YR21. And doing the same thing, darkest toward the stem, working my way out to the lightest color. I just want to see a little color variation. And you could get away with just using 2 colors. And I'm using E49, E47, E44, and E43 to do the branches here. And then I decided to do a little bit more yellow with a touch of orange. I'm using those same browns, by the way, for the acorns, and just filling those in. I love that little branch with the leaves and the acorns. It's so pretty. And so I'm going to pull out some brighter yellows and with a little bit of orange. And I pulled out a yellow-red orange, so it's a subtle orange. And I'm just filling these in with the same way. And I'm using Y17, Y15, Y13, and Y11. And I think it's YR15. I'm not sure about that. I just picked an orange. And I decided to put some R20 where that highlight spot was on the apple, just because I felt like it was just too white. So, and it was a big highlight spot, so I just filled it in a little bit. So I'm going to cut down an orange panel, and I cut this down to 4 by 5 1/4. So I'll have quite a bit of this showing around, and I just trimmed off a tiny bit of that white panel so that that branch looked like it was coming from a tree off the paper. And just gluing it onto the orange. Now I'll fold this again at 5 1/2. So I'm just looking for my bone folder here. It's always a mad search for the bone folder, isn't it, when you need it, when you're making a bunch of cards like this. So I'm just going to glue this down, not using too much phone tape on my projects, because I know I'm going to mail these out, and I don't want to spend a bunch of extra money mailing things out when I could have just made them flat, because they look nice flat. That foam tape dimension does give them a beautiful touch. And I did put 3 of the green crown jewel gems on that. So that finishes that card. So I'm going to put the links below to the Hedgehog Hollow subscription box. I don't know if this is still available, but certainly you have fall stamps in your stash. And look at the value I got in this kit. I've only used part of the kit. I have not played with very much of the ephemera, and I have not played with the stencils at all. I'm going to do that in a couple weeks. I'll share another video with Hedgehog Hollow stuff. So I'm adding a few gel pen highlights just because I like the way it looks, and that will complete my cards. So I will link below to all the tools that I used and the crown jewel gems and all of that to the Maker Forte store. And friends, if you're interested in taking some classes and spending a weekend doing some virtual stuff, you can check out the Hedgehog Hollow Days, get a ticket and a box full of goodies to use with all the classes. I'll put that link below as well. Please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you're not already subscribed. And my friends, have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for watching.